So here's what I would recommend that you buy to start off your business. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about what gear you need to start your photography business. I'm only going to recommend one lens and one camera body. You don't need a lot to start your business. So please don't think that you have to wait until you have a 35, 50, 85, and 135 to start your photography business. It's just not true. Now I'm gonna say something a lot of people might disagree with, but I would not start with a super cheap camera. And let me explain why. I started out with a Canon Rebel SL2, this one right here. And after about a month of using it consistently, I realized that it couldn't give me the results that I wanted. A big reason that I wouldn't start with something like a Rebel is because you are going to grow out of it very quickly. I think I was only using my Rebel SL2 for maybe a month before I realized that it just wasn't going to give me what I needed out of the camera. So I quickly, and maybe a little prematurely, ordered a Canon 5D Mark III. I couldn't afford that camera and I wasn't making money in photography at all when I ordered it. I don't recommend going into debt over a camera, okay? I'm never going to tell you to do that. I used the QVC payment plan to get my first big girl camera, and I bought this Sigma 35mm 1.4 Art, as every photographer does, for their first lens, which is also a really great lens that we're going to talk about in a minute. That lens served me really well when it wanted to focus. Sometimes it had some focusing issues. Most of the time it was perfectly fine. So here's what I would recommend that you buy to start off your business. First of all, you're going to want a lens that you can shoot a lot of things with, because you're not going to know what you want to shoot until you try it out. You're going to know if you want to do weddings or family portraits or couples or elopements. You're not going to know any of that until you just give it a try. And you need a lens that's going to work in every situation, and this is what I would recommend. I'm actually going to give you two options, but I'm going to strongly encourage you to choose the first one. Now for your lens, I would definitely get a 35mm for your first lens. I'm going to give you a few options if you shoot Canon. Now I don't know anything about any other brand. I shoot Canon. If you shoot Canon, this video is for you. If you don't, just take what you can out of the video. Now since you're just starting out, I'm going to assume that your budget isn't that high. So I would either go with a Sigma 35 1.4 Art Series lens, or if your budget is a little bit higher, I would go with the Canon 35mm 1.4 Mark II. This is the one that I use right here, the Canon, but I used the Sigma for the longest time and it was fine. It is very versatile, so you can shoot almost anything with a 35mm, even landscape photography. I would show you my 35mm, but I'm filming on it right now. But it is by far the most versatile lens. A 24mm can be a little bit too wide, for my taste anyway, to shoot family portraits. Some people use it and love it. It's just not my style. I think it's a very interesting lens to get some nice and cool shots. But for more consistent work, and if you don't want to spend money on two lenses, I would definitely choose the 35mm over a 24mm. The second option is to get a 50mm. The second option is to get a 50mm, like this one right here. The 50mm is also great. You can shoot portraits, you can shoot landscape with it. Probably be a little bit tight for landscape, but you could still do it. You can shoot weddings with it. It is a very versatile lens, and some people prefer the 50 over the 35. Now I'm gonna give you examples of the 35mm versus the 50mm so you can see for yourself. Here are some examples of the 35mm. And here are some samples with the Sigma 50mm 1.4 Art. As you can see, both work perfectly fine. One gives you a little more compression, which is the 50mm, but they both go down to 1.4, so the bokeh is really nice on both lenses. And a lower f-stop like that is going to allow you to shoot longer during your sessions. Now, as far as the camera body is concerned, we already kind of talked about that I wouldn't get a Rebel right off the bat, because you are going to outgrow it. That's just my personal opinion and my personal experience. What I would do is, first of all, if my budget wasn't that big, I would go on keh.com. I'm gonna leave it down in the description box down below. They sell fantastic used gear. I've bought from them before They're a very reputable company, and you can just find all the gear that you need a little bit cheaper. This is not sponsored at all, but I do trust them. The first thing I would do is go on there and look for exactly what you wanted. Now, you can either go the DSLR route, which I wouldn't do, because all the companies are phasing out DSLRs, okay? Mirrorless is kind of the future right now, and no company will be going back to DSLRs. And I wouldn't even be surprised if some companies like Canon, Nikon, Sony stop servicing them over time, because everybody is going mirrorless. So if you don't have the budget for an R6, I would definitely pick up a used Canon Eos R. So if you don't have the budget for an R6, I would definitely go for the Canon Eos R. It is a freaking amazing camera. It's what got me started in mirrorless. And I remember when I sold my 5D Mark IV to pay for the Canon Eos R, I had no regrets from the minute I put my lens on there. Now just keep in mind that when you order a mirrorless camera, you're gonna have to get this adapter right there. This adapter right here, which is going to allow you to use EF lenses on your mirrorless camera. Don't worry though, I will link everything down in the description box down below so you can pick it up if you order your camera. And they're not too expensive. This one was about $99. Now the reason I would do that is because the lenses that they made for the mirrorless line of cameras are extraordinarily expensive. I make a full-time living off of photography, and I refuse to pay $3,000 for a lens. I just won't do it. When the EF lenses are fantastic, they work flawlessly on a mirrorless camera, I don't see the point of paying $3,000 for a lens. I don't know, I haven't gotten to try it yet, so I can't talk too much about it, but what I will say is I wouldn't do that. I would more so put your money towards something that you're actually going to need, like a laptop. Okay, so you got your camera, you got your lens, you need a memory card. This is the only memory card that I use and the only one that I recommend. So I use the SanDisk Extreme Pro, and I usually only buy the 128 gigs. All right, now you have your camera, you have your lens, now you need something to edit on. Now you have two options. Most people wouldn't recommend this, but I'm going to because I think it's amazing. You can either edit on an iPad Pro. I would only recommend the 12.9 inch to edit because the bigger screen is really helpful when you're trying to get the little details. Or you can edit on an M1 MacBook Pro. Now the reason I'm not gonna say any other MacBook is because the M1 chip has saved so much time in my life editing that I'll never go back. And all the new Apple products like the M1 iMac, they're all gonna have the M1 chip in them moving forward, and I would not buy an Intel chip ever. Plus the M1 chip MacBook Pro was actually cheaper than the Intel one, and it performed better. I probably use my iMac the least, although I do love it. I don't love sitting in my office because I have a toddler and she, you know, always wants my attention, and she definitely does not want to sit up here in my stuffy office and watch me edit. So at least I can take my MacBook Pro downstairs while she plays and do two things at once. Now, some small things that I want to mention that might make your life a little bit easier when you're starting out is, of course, always having, and this might sound like common sense, but always having a camera strap on your camera. It's kind of inconvenient when you don't, just because you might need to adjust your client's hair or something, and you don't want to always be having to run to your camera bag and put your camera down before you do anything else. It's just more time efficient if you have a strap or a dual camera strap, or if you're shooting with two cameras. Another thing that I always carry with me, and if you've shot with me before, my clients are probably gonna laugh because I always stick it in my bra, is a microfiber cloth. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, it's Hawaii. The weather's really unpredictable. Sometimes my lens fogs up, sometimes there's a mist from the ocean that gets on my lens. I always need a microfiber cloth. I never leave for my session without at least two. Another thing that I always carry with me on sessions is this little brush. Now you can get these in any camera cleaning kit. You can order them off Amazon for less than $10. But this is a really soft bristle brush to get the sand out of my lens, because there's always sand in my lens after a session or during a session. And the last thing I would recommend is an SD card holder like this one. There's a lot of sand in mine, but it ensures that A, you keep them organized, because that's important, but B, that your SD cards don't get scratched in your bag. There's a lot of trial and error in photography. I have failed far more times than I have succeeded in this business. I promise you, nobody gets it right on the first try. When you have the basics, then you can start adding fun lenses to your kit, you know, once your budget increases, once you start making money with your new career. I just added an 85mm. I had this lens years ago and I wasn't sure if I wanted it again because I sold it because I wasn't using it that much, but I really wanted to buy this for my daughter's birthday photos. I'm gonna attach them right here so you can see just how gorgeous they are. And I used it at a client shoot recently, and I want to show you this one photo in particular. It's so dreamy. The compression with an 85mm is absolutely beautiful. I can't use it a lot for client sessions here in Hawaii because they want the scenery, right? They want those wide angle shots, which is why I use my 35 the most out of any other lens, because everybody wants the Hawaii scenery. Nobody wants too much bokeh. So I think I more so just got this for my personal use, and that is honestly all I would recommend to get started. Then you just have to ask anyone you can, your neighbor, your friends, your mom, to go outside and just practice photography. You will get better, you'll learn through trial and error, you'll get frustrated, you'll want to quit, you'll get sad when your photos don't look like the ones on Instagram, but trust me when I say that you will find your own style and it'll all be worth it. I hope this video helped you out. I love you guys so much and I will see you in the next one.